This is North Georgia's News Talk.
WVUN, they're playing basketball. We love that basketball. They're playing basketball.
I just saw this tweeted out, and I have to repeat it. Because it's what I do. 6 minutes after 7 o'clock. Thanks for sticking with us. Once a year, we offer to pay our associates to quit, says Jeff Bezos of Amazon. I haven't read the rest of the story. You know how I am about headlines. But I feel like that's a headline that should never be a headline. Welcome back to Game On, your nightly dose of sports talk on North Georgia's News Talk, folks. I'm Katie B. And coming up, we're going to check in with our man at the Masters, Robbie Ross of WLOV, covering the Masters for WLOV. Of course, today was the first round, so we'll see what's the what there. But I'm excited to bring your way our next guest, ESPN.com's Mechelle Voepel. She's charged with the task of covering college sports, but is best known, at least by me, for her coverage of women's college and pro hoops. Thanks so much for joining us, Mechelle.
Thanks for having me, Katie.
Absolutely. We're going to cover a number of topics, all under the umbrella of women's basketball. But for starters, I want your opinion on where would you rank Gino Auriemma on the list of greatest coaches, period? Not women's basketball coaches, but greatest coaches. Where do you rank him?
Boy, it's pretty high. I think in terms of it's hard to say anybody who's done more for his sport than Gino has. And I know in your neck of the woods there's a lot of Tennessee fans, and they bristle at that. But I think you can talk about both Pat Summitt and Gino Auriemma without in any way lessening the greatness of the other. He's a guy that came along at the right time in the right place. He has a large media following because of geographically, but he's also he's an amazing guy with the media. And I think that's helped that program a lot. And then how can you really question how good a coach he is when you look at not just how good Connecticut's been, but then look at the careers after Connecticut of his best players. And even some of his players that were, just okay players have had long and pretty distinguished careers both internationally and in the WNBA. So, and then there's one more thing, which is the guy's 8-0 in finals. So that's pretty amazing right there, that every time they've had a chance to play for the national championship, they've won it.
It's interesting you bring up my neck of the woods. I am, in fact, I am a Tennessee fan. I grew up one, and really that was the only team when I was growing up that was ever on national television, and I'm surrounded by Tennessee fans, as you just mentioned. And I'm not one to spew vitriol, but it is deep and spewed a lot where Connecticut and Gino Auriemma are concerned. I think a lot of that has to do with the relationship that sort of deteriorated between he and Pat. But nonetheless, interesting that you mentioned that. Now, there's a conversation that's happening right now on the heels of UConn winning its 9th national title. And it's not a new one. And it's that UConn's success in women's basketball, a bit of a double-edged sword. And frankly, people were having this conversation about Tennessee in the 90s and early 2000s and Stanford in the 90s. And the star status of the program draws fans. The star status of the players draws fans. The lack of competition is a deterrent to fans. Where do you stand on that? Do you think a program like UConn is good for the game of women's basketball, or maybe not so good?
I think it's very good for women's basketball, but what would also be very good is if they lost a final, which of course they don't want to do that, but that would be almost like the perfect thing for the game, because they do bring in a lot of fans. It's interesting because I know you guys are going to be talking about the Masters, as everybody will, for the next 4 days. The thing I keep hearing about the Masters, though, it's just not as exciting because Tiger's not here. And he's not here, and we really miss him. And it kind of cracks me up that people will say, a team that's great can be bad for the game. I get why they say that, but by the same token, when a great team is not in the Final Four, and this is the men's or the women's, when a great player is not in a final, say at a Grand Slam tournament, or in contention at a major golf tournament, everybody misses that greatness, that gravitas that goes with a program or a player that we know is great. The other thing that I think happens in women's sports is that there tends to be, from a general sports audience, not very much institutional memory. So people have kind of forgotten that Texas A&M won the championship 2 years ago, and Baylor went 40-0. 3 years ago was Texas A&M, and Baylor went 40-0 2 years ago. As great as UConn's been, and I absolutely understand that people have UConn fatigue because they had those 2 back-to-back perfect seasons. Now they won last year, they won this year. You still have to say, hey, that Texas A&M title was real. They really did win a national championship. Baylor's 40-0 was real. So we do have other programs that have emerged on this gigantic, eclipse sometimes that it feels like that UConn has thrown over women's basketball. Other programs have emerged. So that's the long answer. The shorter answer is no, I don't think greatness ever hurts you. Would it be great to see them in a final where they actually got beat, just because I think people would find that very exciting? Yeah, I think it would be.
Listen, we all appreciate greatness, and how can you not appreciate a UConn or a Baylor, an Odyssey Sims, a Brittany Griner? But I appreciate what you said about UConn fatigue, because I think therein lies everyone's issue. They're tired of seeing UConn win, but you still appreciate the greatness that lies there. I said we're going to cover a number of topics, and you've written about Tyler Summit being the new coach at Louisiana Tech. You like that hire?
I like Tyler.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the best answer I could give to it. This kid, I think, I still call him a kid, I shouldn't. I keep trying to say, this young man has carried himself in a way that I think, as much as Pat Summitt's 8 national championships and the fact that she went all over creation to play teams to help make the sport better, I think those are her 2 greatest accomplishments as a coach. Her accomplishment as a mom in raising this young man, I think, is something I admire as much as anything else, because he is such a good person, and he has been so much a caretaker of his mom's legacy. I wrote last week that Tyler always says that the single biggest lesson he got from his mom is to make relationships with people, to make those good, to cultivate them. And Tyler's done that really since he was a little kid.
Yeah.
We've all, spoken to him and watched him grow up as he's become a young man, and he faced I think, just a horrible thing that he's facing now. And I know how hard this is for him. But he has absolutely stepped forward and been a spokesperson for his mom's, foundation, as well as developing himself as a young coach. I think his timetable got moved up because of his mom's illness. I have a feeling that Tyler may have wanted to work with her before he was ever a head coach. That, unfortunately and really tragically, isn't ever going to happen. So I think the timetable got moved up, and people will say, he just got this job because of his name. I think with anybody who's a child of a famous person, you talked about double-edged sword, that is too.
Right.
Because will he get opportunities? I think yes. His name means a lot, but then he's also judged very harshly, because it's like, you got this chance because of your last name, now what are you going to do with it? I hope this works out both for Tyler and for Louisiana Tech. You know about their history. That's a program that has been a little bit left, well, not a little bit, they have been left behind by the changes in college athletics, but they have such a great history. They have a fan base that has a lot of institutional memory. You'd like to see Tyler be successful there, and certainly you'd like to see Louisiana Tech, get back as more of a player. And they'll never be what they were, realistically, but get back as a player, at least among the mid-major schools.
Yeah, they were a preeminent program well before Tennessee was ever on anyone's map. We're continuing our conversation with Mechelle Joseph, women's hoops writer for ESPN.com. Tyler Summit mature, whether that can translate to being a coach that brings that program back to at least somewhat of dominance, who knows? But I like that you say you like Tyler, but maybe not so much him as a coach right now. But how smart was it of him to hire Mickey DeMoss and that be the first move he made? Now, I question whether or not it was him that made it. I honestly do. But for her to be sort of backing him right now, that's a good move, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of also kind of fun for us historical buffs, and to think, Tyler's first hire was somebody who was, in the room when he was born back in 1990. We all know the story of Pat Summitt going into labor and then having, she was visiting Michelle Marciniak on a recruiting visit, goes into labor and gets on a plane and says, "I'm not having this baby anywhere but Tennessee." And Mickey DeMoss was with Pat, and one of the funnier stories, I think, of the many funny and endearing stories in Tennessee lore was that one. Mickey DeMoss, she's been in the women's game forever, and certainly I think is somebody that can be is more that has the voice of experience, if you will, and can help Tyler along. And she's also, that's her alma mater. So as if she didn't have enough emotionally invested in this. I mean, this is a kid I'm sure she loves like her own son, and this is the school she went to. So I think this is probably a big deal for Mickey to try to make this work as well.
Got a couple minutes left. Mechelle, I want to wrap up with the WNBA Draft happening next week. Alyssa Thomas, obviously a big name. You've also got Odyssey Sims, Stephanie Dolson, and Bria Hartley, for that matter, I think should be high draft picks just for the sheer fact that they were able to tolerate Gino Auriemma for 4 years, which clearly makes them mentally tough and have a great deal of intestinal fortitude. Who do you see being 1 through 5? Can you break that down for us at all?
Yeah, I think Shanae Ogumake from Stanford is going to be Connecticut's pick at number 1. Because I think it's hard to pass up as good an athlete and as good a person as she is. Yeah. You also have a real direct comparison to what she's going to be like because she's her older sister. Nneka was a number 1 draft pick and has been successful so far in the league. So I think Shanae is going to go number 1. Then I believe Odyssey Sims is probably going to go number 2 to Tulsa. That's what I think they're going to do. What Dan Hughes is going to do with San Antonio is not as clear. I think he really likes Stephanie Dolson, but can you pass up on Alyssa Thomas, or for that matter, what about Kayla McBride? I think she's going to be in that mix too. You have Bill Lambier with New York, who has said he really wants a guard. I have a feeling probably he's going to lean more towards a Kayla McBride if she's still available. Then we're looking at is who's still left on that board. If you're talking about, obviously 1 being Shanae, 2 being Odyssey, 3 being possibly Alyssa Thomas, 4 being Kayla McBride, then 5 probably, I think, is going to be Stephanie Dolson. So the other thing I think you add in, or at least I do, is the success of players, from programs that have had a lot of success. There's a pedigree, you would say, and Connecticut has had a lot of success. So I think that's why players like Dolson and Hartley, I'm not sure, Hartley I don't think will go much lower than 6 or 7. She might even go a little higher. The fact that Connecticut has had so much success in the league, I think, makes those players good bets for the draft.
Definitely going to be interesting to see what happens. And I know more so than anyone else, I can't wait to watch Odyssey Sims play in the WNBA. Anybody who can, with her height and with her really lack of lateral quickness, drop 30 points a game on people is going to be fun to watch at the pro level. Mechelle Voepel, can't tell you enough how much I appreciate you being on with us and providing your insight. Love reading you on ESPN.com, and keep up the good work. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate having the chance to be on.
Absolutely. What great insight. Let me tell you what. You want to know somebody who's at the heart of it all? She's covered Baylor so many times over the last few years. Inside and out of that program, man. Inside and out of the Tennessee program. Inside and out of the UConn program. She's the hub of women's basketball where ESPN.com is concerned. When we come back, our man at the Masters, Robbie Ross of WLOV, is going to join us. This is Game On WDUN.